What's up guys, my name is Ace, and welcome back to another gun guide. This is the series where I go into great detail with all of the stats as well as some excellent attachment combinations for every gun in Modern Warfare 2. And in today's episode, we're going to be moving on to the brand new ISO Hemlock assault rifle that was just added with Season 2 of Modern Warfare 2. Just keep in mind any gameplay you see in the background will be against bots because I am not buying the battle pass this time around and therefore I don't actually have this gun yet. However, I was able to access it fully in custom games in order to collect all this data for you. And starting it off as always, let's have a look at our damage profile, and with this gun, it's going to be a 3 to 5 shot kill depending on the range and depending on which body multiplier you're hitting them in. Within the maximum damage range, you get a 3-shot kill anywhere in the torso, whereas once you start to get to the second damage range, this is where you need to mix upper torso shots in if you want to maintain a 3-shot kill. As for headshots, generally speaking, they aren't going to be helping you out with this gun, so I wouldn't worry too much about those unless you're going for camo challenges. After that, let's get into our rate of fire, which is 600 rounds per minute. This is identical to the Cast-Off 7.62. And what this means is with a 3-shot kill, our time to kill is 200 milliseconds, which is a very competitive time to kill. Whereas with a 4-shot kill, our time to kill will increase up to 300 milliseconds. As for our bullet velocity, based on my hand testing, this appears to be exactly the same as most of the other assault rifles in the game at 590 meters per second. And now let's move on to our range values, which, as we can see here, our first damage range will carry out to about 24 meters. And this is where you don't have to prioritize upper torso shots, you just have to shoot them anywhere in the torso and you'll get a 3-shot kill. Whereas the second damage range, where we do have to mix upper torso shots in, will extend out to 32 meters, and then beyond that, it'll be a 4-shot kill. Then let's have a look at our hipfire, which is pretty standard for assault rifles in this game. There's not too much to say there, and it's a pretty similar story when it comes to our idle sway. There's definitely a fair amount of idle sway with this gun, but that's pretty normal for assault rifles in this game. Next up, let's have a look at the recoil with the Hemlock, and as we can see here, there's not a ton of recoil. The magnitude is kept in check nicely. We don't get a crazy amount of side-to-side bounce for the most part, and the initial 10 or so rounds that you fire kick almost straight upwards. After those initial rounds though, it will cut fairly hard over to the right, so that is just something you have to be prepared for, but the overall magnitude isn't so bad, and I do consider this to be quite an accurate gun. Now, let's move into our handling stats, and our aim down sight time is just a little bit on the slower side for assault rifles, but still very reasonable at 260 milliseconds, whereas our sprint to fire time is very normal for assault rifles at 210 milliseconds for our standard sprint out time, and 310 milliseconds for our tactical sprint out time. As for our reload add time, this is a little bit on the slow side for an assault rifle at exactly 2 seconds, so you may have to plan out your reloads a little bit more than some of the other assault rifles out there. And now let's move into our mobility stats. And when it comes to our base movement speed, it's basically bang on average for assault rifles. Our sprint movement speed is a little bit below average for the assault rifles. And our aim walking movement speed is also right around average there. So for the most part, it's pretty normal, but you aren't going to be sprinting quite as fast as many of the other assault rifles out there. And with that, that pretty much covers it for the base stats of the ISO Hemlock. However, it turns out this is a 2-in-1 sort of a gun because we have access to a bunch of different ammo types chambered in 300 Blackout rather than 5.56, and when you use any one of these ammo types, it actually converts our damage, range, rate of fire, recoil, and bullet velocity values. So let's have a look at exactly what 300 Blackout does and whether or not you may want to use it. And the first big thing that you might notice here is our damage values are definitely increased with this, and while we still have the same potential when it comes to number of shots to kill at each one of the ranges, with body shots at least, it is worth noting that this is going to be much more consistent at getting those kills. So for example, in the maximum damage range right up close, you can hit them literally anywhere in the body and it will be a 3-shot kill, whereas without 300 Blackout, you do have to hit those torso shots. If you mix limb shots in, you will take 4 shots to kill. So that's the first thing we notice there. Additionally, with headshots, now we have the ability to get a 2-shot kill to the head, out to mid ranges actually, so that's pretty solid. Then I also wanted to talk a bit about the ranges, because our range values are reduced a little bit. So within each one of those damage ranges, we can see different damage drop-offs. And this doesn't seem to give a flat reduction to your range drop-offs. These are just a new set of range drop-offs that we get. So we do lose a bit of range there, but we do gain some extra consistency. However, our rate of fire is reduced down to 550 rounds per minute, which means with the same number of shots to kill, it is going to be killing slower, and our new time to kill potential is now 218 milliseconds up close rather than 200 milliseconds. So when you select this, you're basically trading that little bit of time to kill potential for an improvement to the consistency based on the body multipliers that you're hitting. Now on top of this, I was a bit surprised to find that the recoil is also increased when using 300 Blackout, and there's no mention of this in the menus, and it appears the actual values must have been adjusted, because typically if you lower the fire rate without touching recoil values, you get better recoil, because the gun has more time to recenter. That is clearly not the case here. You will be less accurate with 300 Blackout. Also, our bullet velocity is slowed down to below 350 meters per second. I can't test this accurately with hand testing since you can't see the bullet tracers, and you need those to test that. And you do gain that benefit of subsonic with this, where enemy skulls won't appear above their heads for their teammates when you kill them. So overall, 300 Blackout is excellent if you want to improve that consistency, if you're somebody that's maybe a bit sloppy with your aim, you hit a lot of limb shots. However, there are some clear downsides to this as well, and I'd say if you're really confident at hitting at least torso or upper torso shots, just stick to the standard ammo type. You're likely going to find more success there. And now that we have that covered, we can move into some other unique attachments on this gun, and the first thing I want to cover is the barrel attachments and how they impact our ranges. And as we can see here, the first 3 barrels we have access to will reduce our range values by 7.5 to 15%. And then for the final 2 barrels, these ones give us the same boosts to our range based on my testing. However, it's inconsistent depending on which damage range drop-off we're looking at. For the first 2 damage ranges, it will increase them by about 33%. However, our minimum damage range, that final drop-off point, that will be increased by about 58% with these barrels. So a huge increase in that area, but it's not like that's our 3-shot kill potential, so it doesn't make a huge difference. I just wanted to point out that it's a bit inconsistent there. As for how these barrels impact our recoil, as we can see here, most of them don't really have a massive impact on recoil. However, you can see some slight variations. Out of all of these, I really like that final barrel, the Fielder 250, because those initial shots with your recoil are literally straight up, and they're also grouped nicely together compared to some of the other ones that are a bit less consistent. And then finally, when it comes to our barrel attachments, let's have a look at how they impact our aim down sight speeds. Keep in mind, these are hand-tested values, so there is a little bit of rounding present. The first 3 barrels don't have a massive impact, whether positive or negative, when it comes to our aim down sight speed. However, those final 2 barrels will be hurting our aim down sight speed by a very noticeable margin, and therefore you really have to be aware of that if you're selecting those. And with that, it's finally time to move into some excellent attachment combinations that I built for you guys. And the first one is my all-arounder. And with this, we're using the Second Tread 40 muzzle, the FSS Sharkfin 90 underbarrel, the OLEV laser, the Raid 90 stock, and the X10 grip. I actually don't mind the iron sights on this whatsoever, especially if I'm playing a bit more aggressively, which I like to do with this build. And with this, our aim down sight speed is very slightly improved at about 255 milliseconds. Our sprint out time is very noticeably improved at 150 milliseconds, which is great. And our recoil is looking very solid. This is a very accurate, easy to control gun with decent mobility, decent handling, and an amazing time to kill potential as long as you're hitting those torso shots for a 3-shot kill. So personally, I really like that setup. However, I did want to provide a variation of this, at least, for those that want that additional consistency with the 300 Blackout rounds. It's going to be a very, very similar build here. In fact, the only thing I did is I swapped the underbarrel for the 300 Blackout ammunition. Now with this, we have the same handling and mobility stats as the previous build, but now we just get that additional consistency. So it doesn't matter if we shoot them in the arm or the leg, for instance, we'll still get that 3-shot kill no matter what up close. However, our time to kill potential is going to be slightly worse because our rate of fire is slightly slower, and our recoil is also going to be noticeably worse with this as well. So that's why I just provided this as an alternative. I personally lean more toward the previous build without 300 Blackout, but if you want that added consistency, try this one out. You may like it. And then finally, I also wanted to share a solid ranged build for this as well. This one would be great for maps that have longer ranges, or for like Ground War or Invasion or DMZ, and perhaps even Warzone, although I'd probably go with the 45 round mag if I was playing one of those modes. But with this one, we once again have the Second Tread 40 muzzle. This is the one that just seemed to work best for this particular gun's recoil. We've got the LR 3056 barrel. This one gives us a massive boost to our range values, which is excellent. We once again have the OLEV laser, the Slimline Pro optic, and the X10 grip. And with this, our aim down sight speed is noticeably slower than the base, but still manageable for a long range build at 350 milliseconds. Our recoil is very nicely improved here. This is very, very accurate and easy to control, even at really, really long ranges. This thing's basically a laser beam. And our sprint out time is also great with this particular build at 150 milliseconds. And this is just a very solid choice if you want to hang back a little bit more and pick people off at longer ranges. And with that, that's going to wrap it up for today's gun guide on the ISO Hemlock. As for my thoughts on this gun, keeping in mind these thoughts aren't based on public match experience, but it is based on extensive testing in custom games and playing around with all the stats and collecting all the data, I really think this is a solid gun. I think it fits really nicely into the meta. I think it's a nice alternative to the Cast-Off 7.62. It's very similar to that gun in a lot of ways, but it has enough differences that it is able to stand out on its own alongside the Cast-Off 7.62. It is more accurate, but slightly less forgiving when it comes to body multipliers up close. And yeah, basically that's all I've got to say about it. I think it's an excellent addition that fits in nicely. I don't think it's overpowered. I don't think it's underpowered. I think it's just a very good gun. Now, of course, those are just my opinions on the ISO Hemlock, and I'd love to hear what you guys think about this gun in the comments down below. And if you guys missed any of the previous episodes of Gun Guides, I will leave a link to the playlist in the description of the video. I hope you enjoyed this one, and I'll talk to you guys next time.